Hi, I'm Leah.
And I'm Phelan. You know us as the hosts of the podcast, The Secret Life of Canada.
And we've got an exciting bit of news for you.
We do. We want to go to school with you.
That's right. We are now part of the curriculum in a way. We've teamed up with educators from across the country to create teaching guides that go along with some of our best episodes.
We've got teaching guides for Indigenous history.
Caribbean Canadian migration, Black history. Just head to cbc.ca/teaching guides for more info. And it's free.
It's free.
This is a CBC podcast.
This is Unreserved on CBC Radio 1. I'm Phelan Johnson. It's been almost a year since many of us were asked to stay close to home, which has freed up time to take on new hobbies and learn new skills. Maybe you gardened in the warmer months or started baking your own bread. For many Indigenous people, this year has offered the chance to deepen cultural connections, to take some time to learn more, from beadwork to moose hide tanning to learning a language on social media. Today on the show, how Indigenous people are learning traditional skills to beat the quarantine blues.
So this is just one of the trails. Little robin. Thank you everyone for joining. If you have any input or you're like, hey, what's that plant? Please ask. I'll show you this one. This is an Oregon grape or sunny each in Sinchothan. And these are kind of like a low-lying evergreen shrub who have yellow flowers eventually. And these flowers turn into little purpley blue berries in the summertime. And these berries are edible. They're very, very sour, but they're a good medicine. And also, I'll kind of show you this, if I can. The stem is this bright yellow color. And that's what we make yellow paint out of traditionally, which I would love to do.
That was Sarah Jim. She's a member of the Wasanich Nation. Sarah was sharing insights about Indigenous plants in the area. Her walk was recorded on Instagram Live and was part of a series called Online on Land. Open Space Art Society launched the series during the pandemic to help people stay connected to each other and to the land, and to allow Indigenous knowledge holders like Sarah Jim to share their teachings. The series was curated by Eli Hurdle. Eli is Cree, and he's the Indigenous curator of Open Space Art Society. Eli, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Phelan. It's nice to join you today.
So what is Online on Land? Can you describe the series to me?
Yeah, it's a program that we developed at the gallery as the pandemic started to unfold and everyone was at home. Kids were out of school. We had to close the gallery down to the public. And so we were thinking of ways that we could engage with the local community. And for myself, as a Plains person, my Cree ancestry is from Alberta, but I was born and raised here. It's always a priority for me in the work that I do to forefront local artists, storytellers, knowledge keepers. And so we reached out to some local folks from the Wasanich and Lekwungen nations to do a series of talks on the land about places that are significant to them.
And how many are in this series?
There were 6 talks in total. 5 were done by one person at a time. And then we ended with a conversation between Apakia and Tyrone Elliott about cedar harvesting and the cedar tree and what that means to them in their lives.
And what kinds of other topics were covered in the talks?
Well, Cheryl Bryce kicked things off, and that was really incredible to go on a guided tour of Meegan or Beacon Hill Park. And Cheryl shared a little bit of her extensive knowledge and teachings around Kwetlau food systems or camas, which was a main food and trade item for the Lekwungen people pre-contact. And Cheryl and her family and community are still looking after that very sacred and special plant. Yeah, there were other plants covered. Bianca Elliott talked about stinging nettle or tex-tex. And then a couple of the other talks were a little bit more general, and they were about certain places around the territories.
And so where did the idea for Online on Land come from?
Well, my friend Ashley Cooper, or Papakia, and I were both watching an Instagram live stream from Vancouver, put on by Vines Festival, and they were hosting Squamish plant person extraordinaire, Sanaquila Weiss, and she was doing a plant walk and talk in her backyard. And I thought it would be great to do a series on these territories and kind of expand upon that idea.
And what about the format of Online on Land, recording this series through Instagram Live? Would you have been drawn to using this virtual format if it hadn't been during a pandemic?
That's a really good question. I don't think I would have. I don't think we would have as an arts organization. It's been really fascinating to see how different organizations and institutions have reacted and been able to adapt. As much as accessibility has been a topic that we've been discussing for quite a while, we've mainly been talking about the physical accessibility of our gallery, which you have to walk up a set of stairs to reach. So to think of other means of accessibility, reaching folks who can't leave their houses for whatever reasons, I think it's really important for folks to be considering where our blind spots were before the pandemic came, and to see what we can really do to integrate what we've learned going forward.
And what did you hope this series would offer people?
I know that for myself and people that I was talking to as the pandemic started to unfold and we were at home, things seemed to really slow down, and it was a time and space that not a lot of us are granted to reflect and look at our priorities. And I think a big part of that for myself was examining not only my relationship to people in my life and things like work, but also the territories that I'm on, the lands and waters that have nurtured me since I was born. And as a Cree person that was born and raised on Coast Salish territory, over the years, it's become more and more important to me that I learn as much as I can about this place, so that I can be here and walk on these lands in a good way.
And as a curator of Online on Land, you were there at each of the walks and talks, recording them on your phone and live streaming them on Instagram. Is there a moment that really stuck out to you or that really resonated with you?
Yeah, there were a couple, but I think the one that really sticks out, and maybe it's because it's from the first presentation with Cheryl Bryce, was when she first saw some of the Quetlao emerging. It's springtime. It's when they were starting to bloom and come out. And Cheryl had been inside her apartment for a few weeks straight, and so hadn't been going out and visiting places around the territory that she normally would at that time of year to kind of check on the plants and see how they were doing. So to really see and feel the excitement from Cheryl when she was seeing for the first time that year the Quetlao emerging and starting to grow and bloom, that felt really, really special.
Well, let's hear a clip from that. This is Cheryl Bryce walking through the meadow of Meagan, also known as Beacon Hill Park in Victoria.
Ooh, I see some camas. This is exciting. So all through here, you can see some camas coming up. Yay! Cheer on the camas. There's some camas right there. They're starting to come up. We're going to find some in bloom, I'm sure. I've seen some here through my walkabouts. Ooh, look. This is exciting. Look at this one. It's in bloom. Hello, camas. Oh, look at them all. There's some more in bloom over here, too. Sorry, trying to hold back my excitement. But look at that. Oh, my goodness. It's beautiful.
That was Cheryl Bryce, who is from the Songhees Nation, and she's talking about camas, also known as Quetlao. It's from the series called Online on Land, curated by my guest today, Eli Hurdle. So all the recording from your series, they're available for viewing online. Are you planning on doing more?
Yeah. The folks at the gallery and myself have been talking, and The series really resonated with a lot of people in different ways. And I think looking back on the things we were able to do in the last year, it's something that really stands out to me as far as accessible programming. We're thinking a lot right now about accessibility and how we're able to reach and engage with different parts of the local population and community. So I think we are considering ways that we can expand upon the program, possibly invite other communities to do talks and maybe even go beyond the geography of Vancouver Island. So there's a lot of opportunity to kind of develop it in different ways.
Eli, thank you for talking with us today.
Thanks so much, Phelan.
Eli Hurdle is the Indigenous curator at Open Space Art Society. To find out more about the online On Land series, visit our website, cbc.ca/unreserved. This is Unreserved on CBC Radio 1, Sirius XM 169 and Native Voice 1. I'm Phelan Johnson. Still ahead. Learning throat singing on TikTok. That's coming up. This is Unreserved on CBC Radio 1, Sirius XM 169 and Native Voice 1. I'm Phelan Johnson, talking all about beating the quarantine blues with traditional skills. And when I saw this story about beaded cat clothing, yes, you heard me, cat clothing, go by on my social media a few weeks ago, I had to know more. Shelby Adams said she always wanted to learn how to bead, but could never find the time. She's from Akwesasne, a Mohawk community that straddles the Canadian and United States border. And after seeing crafters post their designs online, she had a brilliant idea: to make a tiny beaded leather vest for her kitten, Anna.
This past December, when I was just scrolling online and I seen a lot of beautiful beadwork that was posted, we had a powwow over the summer that was canceled, so everybody was just trying to get rid of their inventory. So that's when I hopped online and just seen it all. And it was just amazing to look at. And I never had the time to do anything like that. And I always wanted to, but since the pandemic, I've been trying everything. My first project was the beaded vest for my kitten. Anna is the kitten. We found her on the side of the road with two other kittens. And when we found her, it looked like she was just abandoned completely. Somebody just had left her there. So when we found her, we picked up all three cats and we brought them home. And there was just something about her. I couldn't part with her. And we had a family actually on their way to come pick them all up because they wanted them. And the kids were like, looking at me with their sad little faces because they knew this family was coming after the kittens. And so, I caved. There was just something about her. I just wanted her. And I'm not a cat person, so for me to want a cat, that's a lot. My cat, she has a little lacrosse stick, and I wanted to make her a vest to go with the stick since at the time we were working on a lacrosse documentary addressing the roots of lacrosse. And that's where my mindset was at the time. So I just made her the vest to go with the lacrosse stick. Actually, the little lacrosse stick it's a plastic stick, and we stole it from my daughter's American Girl doll. So at the time, they put out a sports section for American Girl dolls. And because my daughter plays lacrosse, we had bought her that doll that had the stick. So since she's older now, doesn't play with the doll, we stole the stick and let the cat play with it. It's a leather vest, and I'm not sure what kind of leather it is but it was really thick. So when I was beading it, I was having such a hard time getting the needle through it. That's why I didn't want to make another one, just because of how hard it was on my hands to get the needle in and out of the vest. But I got through it, made a design, and it was really tough. It was a hard project. I didn't really put a time limit on it. I just made it while I watched TV. So as I was watching Netflix, I would pick a show and I would just watch the show and I would bead at the same time. So when somebody asked me, how much time did you put into that project? Normally I would be like, well, that was 3 shows of, whatever I watched at the time. The first thing I learned about beading was probably patience. I noticed that when I rushed a project, it just turned out horrible. It was almost like I needed to slow down and just go at a pace that was so slow and not worry about the outcome. And once I finished the vest, I moved on to a medallion. And the first medallion I made was of a handprint, and it was a missing and murdered Indigenous handprint. That was my next project, and I finished it. And I posted it actually online, and somebody wanted to buy it, but I just couldn't part with it because I just need to keep it for a little longer. For me, I think these times have really made me eat a lot of humble pie and appreciate everything. For me, I call it the great pause in my life. I really needed to slow down and just go back to my roots. And I'm just trying to make the most of it, my time, this extra time. And I'm just doing every project that I never had the time to do. And just being patient and going really slow and pacing myself. And that seems to be working for me.
That was Shelby Adams from Akwesasne. During COVID, she taught herself to bead. And she has received a lot of attention online for a beaded leather vest she made for her kitten, Anna. If you want to see pictures of her kitten wearing the vest, and I'm sure you do, visit our website, cbc.ca/unreserved. This is Unreserved on CBC Radio 1, Sirius XM 169, and Native Voice 1. I'm Phelan Johnson. A mother and daughter in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, are doing their part to keep a traditional Mi'kmaq art form alive. Carolyn Simon is 7 years old, and she's been learning about porcupine quill work from her mom, Cheryl Simon. The technique involves carefully threading a porcupine quill through a piece of birch bark to make a design. Cheryl usually visits classrooms to teach students about Mi'kmaq culture. That couldn't happen this year due to COVID-19, so Carolyn stepped in. One day this fall, she gave a tutorial to her classmates at Hawthorne Elementary School. The CBC's Emma Smith visited the family in Dartmouth to get a hands-on lesson in porcupine quill work.
So do you want to make that hole bigger and then to this one, okay?
We poke it again and then put it and do it to the next one, so it's big enough for the quill to go in exactly. It's really cool how you can use porcupine quills from the actual animal and put them into a bark piece like this and make one of these designs or one of these. Look at how I'm doing it. Use our tweezers to pull it in, into the bark.
Oh, you got it, good.
And then we use our hands to put it into the next hole.
There's a lot of our cultural components that you can use and you can be taught through quill work, through the art, because you can talk about science, you can talk about the materials, the life cycles of the trees, what we're doing with them. A lot of our worldview is actually even reflected in the pieces in terms of valuing balance and things like that really comes out in the design work. But the science behind the actual materials that we're using is fascinating because the bark is really the magic with it. You don't need anything to make these pieces other than water.
We're giving these porcupine quills right here in the bowl a bath so we can use them and make them the shape like this. It makes sure that they're bendy so we can bend them and put them in the holes. Because if they're not washed, they're not bendable and we can't put them in the hole.
The porcupine quills, you can get them off the porcupines themselves if you see them in the woods. A favorite technique is to put a blanket on the porcupine, and when you pull the blanket off, the porcupine waddles away and you've got thousands of quills on the blanket. But we often get them for roadkill these days, so that way the porcupines are not going to waste, and it's nice not to have to make sure that they're being valued. When you get the quills, you actually have to wash them really well because there's a natural oil on it that protects the porcupine, and but it'll prevent the color from taking. So you have to wash all of that oil off first 3 or 4 times. It's quite a laborious process. But once the quills are clean, like these ones are, then you can put them into a dye bath. So you can use natural dyes, or even Kool-Aid or clothing dye is a favorite. So if you use a natural dye, you have to make sure that the color's set, because when you soak the quills in order to use them in the work, you don't want all the color washing off again. So there's a variety of things. One of my cousins uses beetroots, was using beets to get a nice color. I've done Kool-Aid, different berries and barks and whatnot, and then the commercial dyes as well.
Then once we're done that, we cut off the shirt. We hold it in because if we have like pets, we don't want them to get poked, and we can't see. And if they have fur, we can't see the blood. We can't see where the hole is in them that got poked with the black end. Because the black end is not good for you to touch. Because if it's not soaked and you touch that end, you're going to get hurt.
Because it's got all the barbs on it, right?
Yeah.
I really want people to value Mi'kmaq knowledge, and to understand the knowledge that goes into it, because anybody can put a quill into a piece of bark, but in order to be a quiller, you have to understand cycles of grasses and trees and animals. You have to know the history of it, the design component of it, and all of that science that goes into it. So that takes years of knowledge and teaching and learning and respect.
No.
You know why? Because you see that. I'm so proud. I'm so proud of her that not only is she interested in it, but she's also good at it. I think within the first 3 or 4 quills that she put in the bark, she picked up the technique. And I was really impressed with that. So it's just been wonderful. And my mother and my aunts and my cousin and everybody who saw her do it and realized how quickly and how much she liked it, we were just all so proud.
The line is really close to
Did you make that one bigger?
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks to CBC's Emma Smith for sharing that story with us. You can see photos of their quill work at our site, cbc.ca/unreserved. This week on Unreserved, we're featuring people who have picked up some unique skills during the pandemic. Marjorie Black, a Beishiko woman, has always wanted to learn how to tan a moose hide. So much so that she packed up temporarily and moved from her home in Beishiko Northwest Territories to Fort Smith to learn moose hide tanning. CBC's Jared Monkman brings us that story.
My name is Marjorie Black, and my son, father-in-law, is working on a moose hide. And I had 3 moose hide and I needed help with, and I didn't know anything about tanning moose hide. So I asked my son's father-in-law if he can help me, and he agreed. And so that's how I end up in Fort Smith, because that's where they live. My reasoning to tan a moose hide is because I don't know how to. Last year I went to Wati to tan a caribou hide with Beninawu. I came home with a caribou hide, tan caribou hide. But then the moose hide is a bigger project than a caribou hide. So, and I needed moose hide because in my tradition, when if we pass away, like when we die, we don't get buried in a running shoes or anything store-bought shoes. We're normally, they give us a pair of moccasins, and that's what they use for our feet. And I thought about it, and I thought to myself, I need to learn these things, so I can pass on our tradition to my children or my generation. But I was stuck with 3 moose hide, and I'm in Fort Smith. So now Ken and Mary Schaefer are training me at their own time how to work on a moose hide to get a tan moose hide.
Marjorie has a lot of work on her hands, but she isn't a stranger to hard work. She's been a Clicho speaker her whole life, and she knows how to live on the land. She says that education and learning the traditional ways is really important, and passing on those skills to younger generations. But the learning process isn't always easy.
To be honest, when you're looking at a product as moose hide, it looks so easy, But when you're working on it hands-on, that's the difficult part. It's a lot of work. I mean, like super lots. Like you have to follow, there's steps that you have to follow. And if you don't follow the step or you don't get the product done right away, it dries up on you, then you have to start all over again. And it's, I didn't realize that it takes that much work to get a moose hide.
Marjorie isn't the only one who knows how much work goes into a moose hide. Ken and Mary Schaefer live in Fort Smith. They're teaching Marjorie to tan moose hides in their spare time. Ken says he's been tanning moose hides for close to 30 years. He learned the skill when he was a young man and says that it's important to pass the skill on.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that want to know how to do a moose hide, but a lot of them, it's a lot of work, right? And once you start, you can't stop till you're done. And if you're lazy to do it, then the best thing is not even trying to start, because you'll never finish it. Well, it's a dying art, like nobody does it anymore. All the old timers that used to do it, they're all gone now, and now there's nobody left that would train the younger generation. That's why I just keep doing what I was taught. And plus my wife does a lot of sewing, and every time I tan a hide, I'm basically just give her the hide to sew with. Yeah, she enjoys it.
When it's all said and done, Marjorie plans to share the hide with friends and family, and she wants to make something special just for herself.
Well, my mom wants to make mittens for my brother. Like, sure, she'll use the product, she'll use the moose hide, and I wouldn't mind owning a pair of a moccasin, because I never owned one before. And that moose hide that I'm working on next will be the one my brother shot last year on Mother's Day. And I haven't touched that one yet. I'm still working on my first one. So I still got 2 more to do after I finish this one. So I still got a lot of work ahead of me. So I'm still going to be here for about another week. So it's good, and I'll probably pass it on to my children too and tell them where I picked it up from, which I picked it up from Ken. He taught me all I need to know to tan a moose hide, and, I'll get my grandchildren involved, to do their part, even to just get a little small pail of water when, it's a big help. We'll see. I still got a lot of work to do.
That was Marjorie Black on learning how to tan moose hides. Thanks to CBC's Jared Monkman for bringing us that story. To see photos of what Marjorie has learned, visit our website, cbc.ca/unreserved. This is Unreserved on CBC Radio 1, Sirius XM 169, and Native Voice 1. I'm Phelan Johnson, talking all about learning traditional skills during the pandemic on the show today. Skills like throat singing. That was Shina Novalinga and her mother throat singing a love song, which is so sweet. The two live in Montreal and have been sharing Novalinga's journey to learn how to throat sing on the social media app TikTok. But that's not the only thing she posts about on the app. Novalinga's Inuk and loves to share everything she can about her culture.
A lot of videos I post with my mom is, of course, throat singing, but we show a lot of beautiful parts of our culture. It could be our clothing, it could be what we eat traditionally, and I also try to educate as much as I can on my platforms. In the beginning, I actually started for fun. I just posted random videos, but as soon as my mother posted a throat singing video of us, that's when I started posting more cultural.
To say she's built up a large following might be putting it mildly. She's gained more than 1.3 million fans on her TikTok account alone. She's been using her platform to educate viewers, too. One video will be on how Inuit throat singing was banned by Christian missionaries and was almost lost forever. And the next video might be about traditional tattoos. Novelinga hopes that her videos help the culture survive and thrive as more Inuit embrace it.
I think it's important to educate in different ways. I do some funny videos, I throat sing as well, and I educate, but it's also important to talk about the history, the dark history about what had happened. So I guess the beauty of it, that yes, there's a history behind our culture with the missionaries and everything, but I think it's important to know the beauty and how rich our culture is and how alive it is right now.
Special thanks to CBC's Daybreak Montreal for sharing that story with us.
Hi, I'm Michelle Shepard, host of Uncover Charmini from CBC Podcasts. In 1999, 15-year-old Charmini Anandavale disappeared on her way to a job that police believed didn't exist. 4 months later, her remains were found in a wooded ravine. I revisit the case that has stayed with me for over 20 years, ever since I first covered it as a cub crime reporter for the Toronto Star. You can find Uncover Charmini on CBC Listen or on your favorite podcast app.
My name is Jeremy Redd. I'm 19. And I'm half Indigenous and half white. Pieces is a CBC British Columbia original podcast where I go on a journey to discover who I am and where I belong. There's racist stereotypes, cultural appropriation, relationships, acceptance. Pieces, arriving February 18th. Subscribe on the CBC Listen app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Next year is the beginning of the decade of Indigenous languages as declared by the United Nations. But with the pandemic forcing many people to spend more time at home, some Indigenous people saw it as an opportunity to get a head start on learning their language.
Ahau neototemetik ke atamiskatenao gahkio Ruben nitesikason onihtigeswapeonehkohtinia. And this evening I'd like to present to you a writing system for Nahio people.
That's Ruben Quinn from the Nahio language class put on by him, Chad Bearskin, and Angela Van Essen on behalf of the Center for Race and Culture in Edmonton. Our next guest has been attending Quinn's class, and he's been on the show a few times because he works here. It's our own Kyle Musica. He's been learning Nahiawewin, or Cree. He's based in Edmonton, and he joins me now. Hello again, Kyle. So why did you want to start learning Cree?
On the surface, I've always sort of wanted to learn how to say certain phrases so I could introduce myself in my language and connect with nature in a new way. But deeper down, I've always sort of felt disconnected from my culture, specifically because, well, I look white and there's a lot of racism in the community that I'm from. So, in the journey to explore that side of me and who I am, I've sort of had to learn what the connection to the land is and what it means for me. And I sort of thought the language would be the best way to do it. Plus, all my friends were always telling me to do it, so I finally just kind of did.
And so how has it been so far?
Yeah, it's been really great. I actually just wrapped up the beginner course at the end of January. And so I'm getting set to try the intermediate course to see if I have the chops for it. I'm not too sure about it yet, to be honest, but I'm looking forward to at least trying. So I'm not entirely confident that I'll be able to handle it, but I sort of thought it would be better to try to push myself a bit and see if I could improve my language skills faster rather than, take the beginner class a few times just because it feels comfortable.
I believe in you, Kyle. I believe you can do this.
I hope so. I really do.
So are you fluent yet? Are you getting there?
Yeah, not even close. I'm not actually ever sure that I will ever get a chance to call myself fluent. In the Nihio language, to be completely fluent is to not only know the words and the sounds, but also the stories and much of the etymology behind the words as well. And because I'm not surrounded by elders all the time learning the language, I'm not sure that I'll ever get to what, folks would consider fluent. To get there, I would say, Ruben taught me this, to get there I would say Nipo Sidnehewan, which means I know the language in its entirety. But, even Ruben, my instructor, listening to him speak, by all intents and purposes, you would consider him a fluent speaker in another language equivalent, just sort of how much skill he speaks with. He also doesn't call himself fluent. So I kind of look at it like, if he doesn't call himself fluent, I'm not sure that I'll ever get there. But, I certainly think that it's something to work towards, right? So, but I think just sort of being realistic with myself is important.
Right. So, what have you learned in the class so far?
Well, I learned that small little greeting off the top that I mentioned to you, which means hello, friend. Also numbers, time, other greetings, and basic conversational words. We also learned how to say different days, seasons, winter-related items, animals, lots of different things. Too many to count. One thing that we learned that at the beginning, around the beginning of what Western culture deems as a new year, so January 1st, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. So in Nehio, New Year is Otse to Kisigao, which literally translates back to the kissing day. Because according to my teacher, Nehioak saw white people kissing when the clock struck midnight on New Year's Eve. And so they decided to name it the Kissing Day because, as folks might know, the solstice is what's important to Cree folks. And so that Kissing Day 10 days later was just a little bit funky for them. But I just thought that was a really interesting name.
Yeah, I think I might take that up. It sounds nicer than New Year's. The Kissing Day.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm. So there might be a lot of people just starting to learn their language or maybe thinking about starting. Do you have any advice for these people?
Yeah, I think in general, if they are thinking about starting their language or starting and feeling lost or sort of hopeless, just that your ancestors are smiling back down at you, regardless of how many times you mess up. And so, there's no shame in only knowing a few words or maybe even none at all. The only words I knew when I was a kid, the only Nehio words I knew, or my mom would yell astam for come here or awas for go away. So, as well as a few body parts that were weaponized as swears. But I think if folks are sort of learning their language and they don't really feel like they are getting very far, the most important thing that I have found is articulation. So Ruben, my teacher, he always half jokes, but he's half serious when he says this, that when you're speaking Nehio to, quote, activate your res accent, which is funny, but also, you're saying the words as they're intended, and that's important. So here's another example. A classmate mentioned that, if I say Kyle Natigawin, which means I am Kyle or I am called Kyle, if I were to adjust that slightly different, so instead of saying Kyle Natigawin, I say it with a little bit different articulation. Instead of saying I am called Kyle, I would be telling you that I have lice. So it's a little bit different.
Which would be a totally different reason why, social distancing would be a good idea.
Oh, exactly. If I were to say that, instead, people would be definitely as far away from me as possible.
Okay. So how important is it for you to be able to learn the Cree language?
Well, you know what? I have to admit that sort of being in class again in general, I haven't been in class in a few years, and it's weird to sort of be learning again in an environment like that. But so I've just felt so disconnected from people due to the pandemic and for other reasons, and of course it's not really a way to necessarily connect with people because it's over Zoom. There's certainly some limitations there, but learning the language helps me connect with myself and my ancestors and my dog, whose name is Osawiatim, which translates literally to yellow dog. I have to thank my friend Emily for that name. Fun fact, she was actually born on June 21st, National Indigenous Peoples Day. So she's an honorary native, I like to call her. And finally, Nanskomentin to Ruben and the Center for Race and Culture for providing Nehio lessons to folks like me. I'm certainly pulling out a lot more of it than just the language, and I'm hopeful that they see that.
Well, I look forward to hearing how your journey continues with the language, Kyle.
Thank you so much, Phelan. I really appreciate the time.
That was CBC Unreserved's Kyle Musica talking about learning Nahiawewin during the pandemic. That's it for this week's episode of Unreserved. If you want to get in touch with us, email unreserved@cbc.ca or find us on Facebook or Twitter. This episode was produced by Stephanie Cram, Kyle Musica, Zoe Tennant, and Anna Lazowski. We were also joined by Sean Vanderklis and Carl Dockstader, who are the CJF CBC Indigenous Journalism Fellows this year. I'm Phelan Johnson. Nyawagoa for listening.
For more CBC podcasts, go to cbc.ca/podcasts.